You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty. I know that I am capable of more. I know that I want more, and I am ready to rise. That is such an important place to be, and it's so much easier to say that than to actually put it into practice. Fear, thank you for that message of self-protection, but I'm going to do this anyway, and I believe that I will be resilient enough to catch myself no matter what happens in the end. Hi, everybody, and thanks so much for tuning in for the first episode of 2021 here, the A Bit From Within podcast. I'm Felicia, and it's only been a week since I last recorded, but I feel like it has been like a lifetime ago, like a year ago. I feel like this past week, even though nothing too eventful happened, it just feels like so much has happened. And it's hard to even put into words why. Maybe it's just this idea of like switching into a new year and reflecting on everything that has happened, but also starting to put all of these hopes and dreams into the future. It's interesting because I'm recording this on a Monday, and this episode will drop on Tuesday, so tomorrow. But so it's been 4 days of being in 2021, and I have only had to write a few things with the date where I've had to write 2021 outside of the context of goal setting, right? Like when I'm talking about like dreams for 2021 and outlines of what goals and aspirations, that part easy to write 2021. But when you're just like writing a date on a check or something like that, it's much harder. And I realized that I almost feel like I'm in a little bit of a denial that it's a new year. And granted, I think we go through this every time there's a new year because you feel like everything should change, right? But then everything is still the same. And Another reason that it might be a little less of that kind of big transition into 2021 is that my New Year's Eve was extremely uneventful. And because we had the full moon on Tuesday last week, I was very rooted in kind of some lunar rituals. You guys, I did it. I tackled one of the biggest beasts for me of last week, which was looking at my business finances. Now, as a business owner, I always have a good idea of what's happening with my business. Like I know how much money we have. I know generally what our expenses are. I know the direction that we're heading. I'm very good with big picture information, and I know how much we save to go to taxes, all of that. But where I lack clarity is in the intricate details of a monthly budget. And there's all these excuses that I come up with, like, oh, well, I pay for a lot of expenses annually, or this comes out this time, this whatever. Last year really threw a wrench in things because we lost so much expected income, and then wedding dates changed. So then unearned revenue changed to 2021. I mean, it was a lot. But I needed to get some clarity because last week, Dave officially put in his notice with work. So he has a month left of working at his full-time job, and then he is going to become essentially my first employee. Which is just crazy and so exciting. And it feels so good to be able to share that now. I didn't want to say anything while it was still in process, but it's actually official now. He has a last day at his job. And so there was a lot of momentum building up to this moment for us. And then it also became a little bit scarier for me because a lot of the things we were like, okay, like in order to make this happen for us, then we need to do this, and this. Like we had a big list. Some of those things we had wrapped our heads around, but not actually executed. And then that caused me to have a lot of fear because I started immediately feeling like my security was being taken away from me a little bit. And I started to feel a little bit of a lack of faith in what we were doing. And just, I had a lot of fear starting to come up, which is natural, right? Fear is there to protect you. But so I was working through some of that last week, and it felt so good for me to go through my business finances, and it gave me a lot of hope. Part of what I did differently this time, and I've done small things like this in the past, but I really took it to a new level this time. So I knew that for me, sitting down and looking at that stuff, like getting into QuickBooks and looking at budgets and stuff, like that is not my expertise. I have a degree in theater. I stopped taking math my junior year of high school. I was in a pre-calculus class, and that was so not for me. And I wrote a story in my head back then that I was like, I'm not good at math. I'm not good with numbers. And so I carry that with me a little bit, not on purpose, but I do, if I'm being honest, I do carry it with me. In fact, I was talking to my mom, who knows me very well, about some of my bigger irrational meltdowns that have all been around money. Like this one time she wanted, I think she just wanted me to go to the bank to set up I don't know if this is right, Mom. If this isn't right, just tell me. I don't know if you can remember either, but it was something very simple. Like we were going to go to the bank and set up a checking account. Like I needed to set up a checking account. But at that point I think I was in high school at this point. I was in so much fear around money. I don't even know why. All of this is just totally things that were happening subconsciously inside of me, that I threw this huge fit. I didn't want to go to the bank. I was scared of talking to the tellers. I wanted nothing to do with this. I just thought I could live out of my savings account and pay for things with cash. I had these crazy ideas about money and all of these things that were, when I look back at it, were rooted in fear. Another time I had a total crazy meltdown was around student loans and like switching things over to like passwords. I don't even remember. Like none of it makes logical sense that I can't even explain it to you, but these huge meltdowns happened for me. And granted, I don't have a meltdown anymore every time I look at all of this stuff, but I can get very annoyed with QuickBooks because I feel like when it comes to me and technology, stupid things happen, like things that should work don't work. Numbers don't line up. Like it's been very aggravating. And so I wanted to sit down with this renewed clarity. And I wanted to make sitting down and looking at my finances, especially in this time where my biggest goal this last full moon of last year was to release the fear around money, release the fear around not having enough, release fear around not being a good money person, release fear of getting clarity on those subjects. It's time to move that into the story of my past so I can have a new story from here on forward. And so part of what I did was I set up a little space so it was a little bit more exciting. I was actually working on a jigsaw puzzle last week, and so I sat up at the same table as the jigsaw puzzle in case I needed a visual or mental break. I could just take a second to look at the puzzle and try to figure that out. I had my journal out with my pen and paper. I had my checkbook there. I had some of these candles that I was lighting for abundance and for grounding. And then I took a couple of different crystals that connect with different chakras. So one for the root chakra for grounding, one for the sacral chakra for creating, one for the heart chakra, which is also green. So money and abundance and heart opening. And what else did I have? Just a couple little tokens of clearing energy too. Like I was burning a little bit of white sage, and yeah, just really sat down with this intention of I am ready to let go of fear. I am ready to look at these things. I believe in myself that I'm capable of handling this. I believe that I can sort through this and I can maintain an inner feeling of being in neutral or in a place where I'm positive. Because so often what used to happen, or, could happen, is you get on that track where like you expect things to go wrong. You expect yourself to get aggravated. You've lived that before, and so you expect it to happen. And so I was like, I cannot allow myself to go back to that place. I have to stay in a place where I am totally in a neutral place to breathe into this, to face this, to change how I feel about it. And I have to say that like taking that mindset shift really, really worked for me. And I got all of this clarity, and I didn't do things the way that I used to do them. I kind of approached things in a new way, even from a budget perspective. And it felt really, really great. And it just left me with a lot of hope and excitement for the year ahead. And that there was so much that happened there with me kind of moving through that by the time that Thursday evening came around and it was time for the actual New Year's, I felt like I had already done it, or I had just processed so much and set some different releasing intentions that I didn't have this capacity to move into the new year with this like ultra excitement. Now, owning my own relationship to New Year's Eve, this started back in high school. I remember, I think it was my senior year of high school, New Year's Eve. I was with a bunch of friends at one of the houses where we'd always hang at. And I remember wanting to leave early, and I just wanted to go home, put on my season 2 of Friends, which came on discs back then, like DVDs, because you didn't stream things from Netflix or anything, and just watch Friends. And I think I painted on a canvas, and I decided then that all I wanted for New Year's was to be by myself. And that is manifested throughout, like ever since then. And I don't always consciously think of it. But for many years, I would just spend New Year's Eve alone, creating art, reflecting, watching movies, or listening to TV, or just being alone, journaling. I'm not really a party person anyway, but I think that's just my way of really wrapping my head around a new year. And then, gosh, over the past couple New Years, it really does become this thing where like you don't remember them. They're not significant because they're not significant in a memorable way, because it's not like you can be like, oh yeah, I remember that party was at this person's house and I wore this and we did that and we celebrated like this. So I can't even really remember the past several New Years. But with this New Year, Dave and I both had pretty busy work days on Thursday, and we hadn't really discussed like what we were going to do. We had talked about a couple different things the day before, but we talked about it very generally. And I don't know about a lot of you guys, but in my relationship, when we talk about things generally, it usually means that we're on 2 different pages. And that ends up coming true. So on Thursday, we were driving somewhere. Oh, we were driving to pick up my car. Oh my gosh, my car. It didn't cost me anything this time, but because the belt had to be replaced, it was a little bit loose, so it was creating this squeaking noise. So we had to drop it off to get it tightened back up, had to pick it up. So we were picking up the car, and I just noticed that Dave's mood was a little bit moody. It was being a bit of a Scorpio, a moody water sign. And I had said something earlier about like, should we get like sushi or Chinese food or something? And so he thought we were going to do that. But then I was like, well, what do you want to do tonight? And he was like, nothing. I just want to work and play video games. And so then I was like, well, because we're trying to work on our personal finances too, I was like, I think we should just wait to get sushi or whatever until we can actually like spend some quality time together. Like if we're just going to do separate things, and there's no sense in spending money on, dinner for that. And so essentially, like that night just ended up being both of us kind of doing separate things. And I ended up coming home and working myself for a couple hours. And then I wanted to make crab cheese wontons. And so I was like, well, I have everything. I guess not crab. They ended up being cream cheese wontons because I did not have crab on hand. But I didn't want to go out to the store, and I ended up realizing like I have everything to make the filling. And then I looked up a wonton recipe, and it seemed pretty doable. And so at like 9:00, I ended up making these cream cheese wontons, and they turned out okay. Like they tasted really good, but the dough was a little too thick, and so they had an interesting texture to it. Wasn't bad. They weren't what they weren't fried either. They were air fried. So they were just different than, what either of us were expecting. And of course, you guys, like I shared last week on New Year's Eve, I went through that big breakup 5 years ago. And so I think ever since then, I still carry a lot of that with me during New Year's. And I find myself feeling a little self-protective and a little sensitive. And so I found myself just being like, David said something. Honestly, I don't remember now, but I kind of took offense to it. I was feeling sensitive. I went upstairs. He fell asleep on the floor downstairs, and we ended up like not even connecting at all around like, hey, Happy New Year, anything. Like it was just another night and it felt kind of crappy in a way because like I was kind of holding on to a little bit of hurt feelings, and he was having a really bad day, and it didn't really translate. And when I woke up on Friday morning, this brand new day of this new year, I just was like, you know what? Like, fuck it all, because I can't do the relationship mind game thing right now. Like, I can't go there. I just need to take care of myself. So I took Brad to meet my mom, and we went and drove to get a coffee together, and we just sat in the car and talked for a while, which is so nice. I just really needed that time, that mom time. And one of the things that we talked a lot about is just how you have to just take care of yourself. Like you can't control other people. You can't predict what their behavior is going to be. You can't always even force yourself to get onto the same page as them. Like all you can do is worry about yourself. And that was, felt significant to me, and going into this new year, just remembering to take full ownership for myself, for what I want, for how I participate, for my reactions, for my notions inside of things, for it all. And so, of course, Dave and I ended up getting, back on the same page a little bit later that day, and that felt really, of course, wonderful. And then the weekend happened. It was just a very mellow weekend, and now I'm ready for this brand new week ahead. And here we are. First podcast episode of 2021. It's like I mentioned last week, you guys, I really have been a lot more rooted in releasing and letting go. And while I'm also thinking about the things that I want and the things that I am opening my heart towards, I'm not really doing firm action plans or manifestation ceremonies or any of that where I'm trying to put it into action right now, because I'm really trying to work with the lunar cycles, and I'm waiting for that new moon, which is coming next week on Tuesday. So we have 1 week to go for that, which kind of brings us into this week's astro segment. So segment where I'm chatting about things that are happening astrologically. And you guys know that my biggest focus is usually the moon. And right now, we are getting ready to move into the last quarter moon. So the last quarter moon, I like to view this, it's really interesting. Some people view the lunar cycle in 8 different phases. So like, what would they be? New moon, and then waxing crescent, then first quarter moon, waxing gibbous moon, which is like when it's almost full or moving towards full, then full moon, and then it starts to wane. So then waning gibbons, last quarter, then waning crescent, and then back to new moon. So that's the 8. But I honestly kind of simplify it, and I look at it as new moon, which is moving from the dark into the fullness of the full moon. So that's phase 1. And that lasts for about 2 weeks. And then full moon, which takes us into waning into that new moon. And the reason I like to look at it that way is just this little bit more where you're not feeling as obsessed or like in the details, right? So like I think that having 8 phases can be very confusing because you can lose track of 2 days and then all of a sudden you feel like your whole ritual is off, and it can, for me, I find that it can be a little bit more harmful than helpful. And so when I look at things in these 2 phases of new moon and full moon, it's easier for me to think, okay, we are in a creation phase those first 2 weeks of the new moon. So we are starting ideas, we're creating intentions, we are initiating things, we are launching things, we are active. And then the full moon, we are seeing the spotlight on everything. We are starting to release, we are starting to let go, we're starting to maybe refine anything that has come up, but we are really just trying to process it all, clean it up, clear it out, to prepare ourselves to go back into this new phase of creation again. And it's kind of, to me, it makes a lot of sense. And the other thing that's nice about that is it leaves room for both yin and yang. So it leaves room for those times when you're like to restructure something, to clear it out, to review it. That is a very active thing. That is something you can do tangibly during a full moon cycle. That makes a lot of sense. Same thing. There's a quality for yin inside of the new moon cycle, this time to watch what it is, have more light put onto it, more time to sit and allow yourself to be a conduit of new ideas and new energy. And so as we enter this kind of final week of this full moon cycle, you can kind of think of it as like this descent into the darkness, right? So before we had all of this light shining, this beautiful full moon, and it was like everything that we needed to have our attention drawn to is right there in full spotlight. And now we can begin to continue to let go, continue to really think about the things, okay, what were some of my intentions during that new moon that happened the week before Christmas? So right during the winter solstice, what were some of the things? And there was so much going on there. And there was the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. You might have been thinking big. You might have been thinking, having that feeling of like, oh, a new year is right on the horizon. Like you're thinking about all of these things. Now it's time to look at some of the stuff and say, okay, are there things that I got a little bit wrong, or I didn't see clearly then that I can tune up and clean up right now? Are there things that I thought mattered that don't matter? Are there things that maybe I needed to shift my attention to that I didn't include in that time around because I was so focused on seeing things one way that I forgot a part of the picture? And how can you start to kind of gather those details, let certain things go, so that way next week, as you start to work with this new moon cycle, that you have reviewed it, that you're being more conscious, you're being more intentional. The other thing that is really nice during this, final phase, as we, once again, it's like we move into the darkness or the descent into like the unconsciousness, is what are the things that we don't know? What are the things that might need to get lost in the darkness or will need to have new light shed upon them? Those are the things that we are starting to consider right now. And there's an element of doing and also not doing with that. And I think that the best way to figure out what you need to do is to sit down and lean into yourself. You have to trust your own intuition when it comes to working with astrology, lunar cycles, yoga, having your own spiritual practice. So much of it is trusting yourself. That is part of, for me, a big distinction between how I have found my spirituality compared to how I grew up. When I was growing up in a very Christian schooling and house, there's a lot of idea that like everything that you do, think, come into consciousness should be rooted in your religion. And that might work for some people. That's wonderful if it does. But for me, there is an element of I am a divine being. I am a child of God. And I have been blessed with knowing what it feels like when I'm in connection to my highest self and when I'm in connection to the higher power. You can call that God, you can call it the universe, you can call it divine, whatever it is, higher power. When I feel that way, I have knowing inside of myself. I have those yearnings, those instincts, those intuitions. And that is what I say, find what that looks like for you within your spiritual practice, within your spirituality, within your religion, and use that to help guide you. Because having that connection with that inner voice and knowing how to use that for your own conceptions, that's what's powerful. So the other, that's the end of my moon soapbox. But the last part of this astro segment is that on the 6th, so on Wednesday, finally, Mars is leaving Aries after 6 months in Aries, because usually there's only about 2 months in Aries, but essentially Mars entered Aries, moved all the way through the sign, and then went retrograde, so it went all the way back to the beginning, and then moved all the way back through it. So now it's moving from Aries into Taurus, and so you might notice a big shift over the next couple weeks, like where you might have felt really impulsive and fiery and having all of this need to execute and have these ideas and feel a little impulsive. You might start to move into this place where you're feeling a little bit more lethargic and you're not as riled up about things. Now, Taurus can be a very stubborn sign too, and Taurus does care about things. Usually when it gets to that point, though, it's more in defense of something or in self-protection. But Taurus also has this it's an earth sign. So it's got this slow, steady, it has a lot of financial orientation to it too. So you can probably expect some stuff to be happening with your finances, both receiving income, but also having expenses. Overall, I think it's an interesting placement. I wouldn't say it's like the best thing ever, but what should be nice about it is a welcome change of pace, and it definitely won't be in Taurus for as long as it was in Aries. I think it'll be in Aries until March. I don't know the exact date, but of course, I'll kind of clue you in when that happens. But yeah, so think of all of that. We have a lot of earth energy happening right now, especially once this happens. So So we have Sun in Capricorn, Mercury's in Capricorn, Mars will be in Taurus, Uranus is in Taurus, Pluto's in Capricorn. So all of these are earth signs. That's a lot of earth energy. And now, as per usual, like things are going to be moving. Venus is on the move, Mercury's on the move, so things will be changing. But I think it's a great week to, once again, like I encouraged last week, tap into that earth energy of putting yourself to the grind, working hard, knowing what you want, and actually feeling like you have that energy to execute. So don't get stuck in your ideas of things like, I want to do this and I want to do that. Actually take the action steps to allow it to happen. And hopefully you feel as though this kind of this earth energy we have transiting helps you with that. And if not, it might mean it's a good time to take a look at your birth chart and actually figure out what are some of the ways that the other elements might be. How can you work with the elements that are more active in your chart, probably likely fire and air, to actually help you get into that execution of things phase. So, all right, you guys, that is it for Astro segment. So let's take a quick break and then we'll talk more about faith and trust. All right. So, do you ever get into the practice of like picking a word or two that kind of becomes your symbolic word or your intention for the year ahead? I've seen a couple people posting their word for the new year, or there's always those fun accounts on social media that will post like a video that is flashing a bunch of different words, and then you're supposed to take a screenshot, and then that word that you took a screenshot of becomes like your intention or whatnot. Or it's not even always an intention, right? It's like just is the word of the year. And so for me, this year I have two words. I have faith and trust. Now, these are interesting words. They're even kind of spicy words, I feel like. And the reason that I picked them is because it really helps support what I was starting to discuss earlier around really letting go of fear. A long time ago, I was reading A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson, and I believe she's the one, and if she might not be. So there's a little asterisk. Some wonderful teacher said that the opposite of fear is love. And I've really struggled with that because it didn't ever feel true to me. It didn't feel true in my body. Been listening to this audiobook of Feel Free to Prosper by Marilyn Janae. I'm loving this book. I'm very soon going to be doing a book episode, so I'm probably going to discuss this book in more detail then. But one of the things that she mentioned was this, one, letting go of fear completely. Like fear absolutely gets in the way of you being able to create more abundance in your life, more prosperity. But also the opposite of faith is not love. She didn't say that specifically, but she was saying the opposite of faith is trust and faith. And I liked that a lot better. It kind of was like, that feels a lot better, because when you think of the opposite of fear, especially when you're talking about fears around belief, around what can come true for you, what can you experience in your life, a lot of times what you're afraid of is the disappointment that it won't happen. And so when you bring in faith and trust, you are bringing in two ideas. One, faith, it's this idea of being assured of the things that you hope for. And also there's this element of having conviction about something that you don't see, which is why faith is a huge word in religion is that you don't necessarily have proof that God exists, but you know it in your heart. And then, of course, you see your own proof of that, which becomes your trust in God or trust in faith. And that's kind of the difference for me between faith and trust, because what trust is belief in the character, the strength, or the truth of someone or something. It's something you place confidence in. It can be like a confident hope. And so to me, that the difference kind of between faith and trust and where they go together, but they're also different, is that faith is this idea in things that you can't see or can't prove, but you feel and you know and you have hope in. Trust is kind of more dependent on the result. It's like, I trust in you because the evidence shows me that it's safe to trust in you, and then the result reaffirms my trust in that, and then it continues this relationship. And what happens a lot of the time for a lot of us is that fear grows and can continue to grow because of the disappointments that we have experienced, or the pain that we have felt, or the pain and disappointment that we have witnessed. Even if we didn't witness it in like firsthand, like something that our parents went through, or a teacher or a sibling or something, like a friend, a loved one. But even like when we have heard something on the news, or heard something in a church, or heard a story about something, and it resonates with something inside of us, and we move into self-protection, right? Now, this is a big thing for me because going back to, you guys know that one thing that I always talk about, which is my experience at Path of Love. I had a revelation when I was at Path of Love about the voice of fear inside of me. And the thing that I realized is that for me, fear is a loud, long-winded voice. It needs time to tell me all of the things that it's worried about, all of the things that it is afraid of, like the entire case. It is that it is probably similar to that child that is like relentless, that just will not stop. But if I give it enough space and I allow that to kind of happen, and I just give more space, eventually the voice of fear will get quiet. And underneath that voice is not a loud voice, but it is a powerful voice. And it is the voice of trust, of belief, especially belief in myself. It is the voice of resilience. And it is a sure voice, but it is not a loud voice. And so I have this dichotomy inside of me of this really loud voice of fear and this quieter, more sure voice of power, of conviction, of faith and trust. And so I'm working to develop my relationship with that sure voice inside of me. And while I do that, I have come to that, motivation around that, because I am so fed up with the voice of fear and the way that the fear keeps me a little bit more towards those limited beliefs and invades my ability to have trust and invades my ability to, have that inner belief in what I can do and what I can accomplish. And the thing is, though, is that as sick as I am of that, I have to have a moment of compassion for the reason why the fear voice is so loud, which is empathy, which is experience. My fears are trying to protect me from all of the disappointment, from rejection, from failure, from feeling like I'm not good enough. It is trying to say, hey, if we stay in this place where you know what to expect and you have this amount of people that are bought into you, and that feels okay and that doesn't feel scary, and then you're not let down when you let all these other people down, things like that. That's what the fear is trying to do. It's trying to protect me. And so I need to kind of lovingly say, hey, voice of fear, I get it. I know that you're trying to protect me. I appreciate that. But right now, those thoughts and beliefs are not helpful for me accomplishing and rising to the level that I know that I am capable of being in. I know that I am capable of more. I know that I want more, and I am ready to rise. And that is such an important place to be. And it's so much easier to say that. It's so much easier to say that here with you guys than to actually put it into practice, because the dance that is happening inside of me right now is as I start to say those things and I'm starting to picture them and add things to my vision board, or get ready to really start to act on some of these intentions, things that I started to set back at the last new moon at this beautiful new great conjunction. Now when I start to picture them, I'm also having that inner critic that's saying, that's so rooted in those limited beliefs that come from the place of fear that are like just constantly going like, gosh, Felicia, you're really out of shape right now. Like you've put on some pounds. So like, why would anyone want to watch you do yoga? Why would people want to listen to a TikTok? Or why should you get on Instagram and share what you're doing with people? Nobody's interested. Everybody else is talking about astrology right now. Everybody is doing what you're doing. Every yoga teacher is trying to get people to follow them. Why would they want to follow you? Things like that. And it goes, it's so much more than that. It's just an example. But even limited beliefs around, Dave taking this leap, or like us taking this leap of Dave going full time. There's this part of me that's like, well, now we're going to have to really lock down our finances, and we're going to have to, make sure that we don't spend anything extra, and we're going to have to do this and that. And it's so difficult because you have to be realistic and you have to be responsible, right? Like I cannot go live in this fantasy land where, as we take this huge leap in our finances, that we continue to spend how we've been spending as we've had two bigger streams of income. We have to readjust for initially a smaller amount of income, but we can still believe that we can build towards these new goals, and we can do it in a way that's rooted in what we have while still growing more. So this is kind of like the place that it brings us to, which is this question that I do not have an answer for, but that I'm ready to learn the answer. And that is, what happens when we believe in ourselves? What happens when we trust in ourselves, when we trust in life to meet us, to support us, when we trust in that divine power, that higher power to completely support us in our life, in our endeavors. And when we believe in our ability to rise to the occasion, to put ourselves out there, to manifest and to be co-conspirators with the universe, to be of service to others, to be of service to ourselves. What happens when we believe in ourselves? Can we really have everything that we hope for, that we want? And, are all of those limited beliefs, are all of them just absolute bullshit? My first instinct is yes, but at the same time, I also know that I have to work with those limited beliefs to gently invite them to leave. I know that I can't just be in denial about them. I can't suppress them, but then actually have them really there on the inside. Like if those voices inside of you are loud and the fears are scary, you can't just pretend they aren't happening. Now, I do believe in a little bit of fake it till you make it. I do believe that a lot of what stepping into a new space about is allowing yourself to step in there and fill it out, and you get used to it, and then you can take up that space more easily. But I also think that you have to be patient with those limited beliefs in terms of letting the fear deliver the message it needs to deliver, and then having more faith and trust in what you want and what you're trying to accomplish, and in the logic that, of course, you are capable of this. Of course, you can do this. And fear, thank you for that message of self-protection, but I'm going to do this anyway, and I believe that I will be resilient enough to catch myself no matter what happens in the end. And that's what we have to do. So that's kind of my thoughts right now on faith, trust, fear, and the delicate dance around shifting our mindset. It is not a light switch. It is not on or off. It is not something that we can just take these leaps and forget about everything in our life that has given us all this evidence that has shaped our reality. But it does mean that we do need to be very clear with ourselves on what kind of stories we're telling ourselves, what kind of stories we're surrounding ourselves with, what kind of people who are going to bring topics up and their innermost beliefs, what kind of people we surround ourselves with, and what kind of journey we want to have. You know, just because you want something to happen really fast, sometimes you have to be anchored in the fact that like you are going to be going on a journey, and that you have to show up as your 100% self. You can't force yourself into someone else's journey, and you can't force yourself to be totally ready to receive before you are ready. So if any of this resonates with you, if you find yourself going through something kind of similar, I would love to know where you're at in that dance. And any helpful mantras, motivations, advice from therapists, even experiences that you've had that have helped you have more faith and trust in your life. I look forward to sharing with you over the course of this year the ways that my mindset shifts are going to produce new, beautiful results and fulfillment of intentions. And I'm very excited just to be on this new year journey with each of you. So, all right, you guys, that's a bit from within today. As usual, we're going to end today with a card drawing. So this is the Wild Offering Oracle by Tasha Silver. If you ever get a chance to look up these cards, you can just Google them and see some of the artwork. The art is by this artist named Katie Daisy. And it is like one of the reasons that I wanted this Oracle deck. One, I love the name Wild Offering, but two, it's just these very colorful, kind of whimsical, playful, beautiful cards. Just so what I love. I love colorful. So I'm going to just begin to shuffle the deck here and draw a card for us. The card is money. All my finances are now in divine order. Love itself knows my needs and is the source for all. I needn't cling to gain or fear loss. Every need will be met through offering all to the divine. Of course, I have to laugh because it brings us full circle to this money mindset shift that I spoke more in detail about at the beginning of the episode. But, so many of our wants and needs, they go back to money, because having the supply to take the dream vacation, or to start up the business, or to leave your job, everything is kind of rooted in our ability to support ourselves and to have that security. And oftentimes security does come in financial support. But I love that reminder for today. And I love it at the start of this year. I love it as Mars gets ready to shift into Taurus. Taurus is also kind of associated with the second house of personal finances. So there's that too. And mostly I love that last sentence. Every need will be met through offering all to the divine. And I love that, because I do think we can't only sit here and kind of and selfishly imagine ourselves with all of this money. Like, we all want to be Jeff Bezos. We have to know that who we are, what we are capable of offering out there, of being of service to others, that's unique for each of us. And even though I joke all the time about how, I'm a wedding photographer just like every other girl, and I'm a yoga teacher just like every other girl. Like, I joke about that, but I am not just like every other person, and neither are you. It doesn't matter if you are doing a job that is just like everybody else, or if you feel like you're a dime a dozen. You are unique. Your perspective is unique. Your ability to change the world and to be of service to those around you is absolutely unique. And so when we offer ourselves in communion with the divine, with the higher purpose, then magical things happen, both physiologically, emotionally, spiritually, all of it. It's probably a conversation for a later time. But all right, you guys, that's it. That's it for today. I hope you have a beautiful first full week of 2021. Gosh, I guess we have 52 weeks ahead of us to learn, to play, to grow, to take care of ourselves. Next week, I will be talking about the new moon, the first new moon of the year, new moon in Capricorn. And I will also be getting ready to release the new moon guide. So if this is something this year you want to work more with the lunar cycles, check out the Patreon page, patreon.com/abitfromwithin. You can sign up for the mind level option, which is $6 a month, and that will get you the lunar guides and meditations and ad-free episodes of this podcast. If you're listening to this on the Patreon, I know you already know, and you're rooted in all of the good stuff. So if you have questions, hit me up, email me, social media, whatever. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I just want to wish you the best week ever. Go get it. Until next time.